I'm Kylie,
I'm Peyton,
and
and
this
this is
is
Fires of Change.
Hello. Thank you for tuning in. Today is Thursday, May 29th, 2025. And today's episode will be discussing mental health because if you didn't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're going to, talk about our own mental health and, just kind of things that have we've gone through or dealt with and, ways to, kind of deal with the different parts of mental health. But before we get into that, we are going to get into current events like always. And I will pass it over to Peyton to get us started.
Thanks, Kylie. So today I got our info from pbs.org, so we love that. So kind of exciting. Elon Musk is leaving the Trump administration after efforts to slash federal budgets through Doge. So obviously we all hate Elon Musk. I think he's leaving because he's losing a bunch of money because he's a fucking idiot. But yeah, in Washington, Elon is leaving his government role as top-tier advisor to Trump after spearheading efforts to reduce and overhaul the federal bureaucracy. His departure was announced Wednesday evening, marks the end of a turbulent chapter that included thousands of layoffs, the evisceration of government agencies, the reams of litigation. Despite the upheaval, the billionaire entrepreneur struggled in the unfamiliar environment of Washington, and he accomplished far less than he had hoped. Like, duh, he's an idiot. He's at first he dramatically reduced his first target was he was going to eliminate $2 trillion of waste, which, as we know, it was not waste. It was people's jobs that actually made a difference in government. And all these agencies are just fucking basically fucked. And there's so many layoffs, and it's gone even down to like schools. Adams County School District was like second most cut, I want to say, out of all the school districts. So it's like even on or of all school districts in Colorado or whatever. But even, stuff that affects us in everyday life. So I've had a lot of clients that have been laid off from their jobs, and they're teachers, obviously work in government, all across the board. So yeah, he was like, we're going to cut 2 trillion at first, then it went to 1 trillion, then 150 billion. And increasingly expressed frustrations about resistance to his goals. Sometimes he clashed with other top members of the Trump administration who chafed the newcomer's effort to reshape departments, and he faced fierce political blowback for his efforts, which thank God, because he was making horrible decisions. And so basically the article just goes on to say, you can read it at pbs.org, and it literally, you can type in Elon Musk leaving the Trump administration, and it's like the first one that pops up. But he's going to go back to working on Tesla and his company SpaceX.
Well, speaking of SpaceX, they did also launch their 9th Starship test flight on the 27th, so this past Tuesday. However, it did end in failure after experiencing a rapid unscheduled disassembly.
Because all his shit falls apart.
Truly.
Karma.
Yeah. So, yeah. And this apparently is the third consecutive failure for that particular program, following prior failures in January as well as March. So, yeah, he has not been having a good week, which
we love that.
Honestly, I love to hear. Yeah,
it's what he deserves.
You shouldn't be having a good week.
Yep.
You shouldn't be having a good month or year or life.
Yep. So, yeah. And on that note, people like him are contributing to millions of people's horrible mental health because of all his bullshit. So,
yeah. laying people off unnecessarily, being laid off unnecessarily definitely uh, will negatively affect your mental health, putting it lightly. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, in regards to mental health, Ellie is crying. In regards to mental health, it is something that, I think a lot of people, are now just now understanding how important it is, to, you know, be cognizant of your mental health and, what's going on and how to know when to get help and, just having things to, um, help ensure that you have, that good state of mind or a healthy state of mind. Um, and so I think we're really lucky to live in a time where we have, resources and, um, different ways to be able to attend to our mental health. Um, and so, what are the ways that you, tend to deal with your mental health?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like so I've definitely had anxiety my whole life, like just a very anxious kid. Like I've probably had a stomach ache like almost every day of my life because I'm so anxious. And so growing up in my household, it was very, my dad was very a big stressor, I would say. And so yeah, all that kind of led me to when I was like 15, I was just very, very anxious. It was very bad. And so my mom was like, well, why don't you try going to a therapist? So I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I actually told that therapist some very sensitive information. And I didn't know at the time that, they're mandated reporters. So she had to actually tell my mom. And then that kind of unraveled a whole plethora of stuff. I'm pretty transparent, so I'll just be honest. It was, sexual abuse when I was younger. And yeah, that kind of really started my healing journey. I never had told really anyone about it, definitely not an adult. I told my neighbor that was, she's like my older sister, but she was only maybe 3 years older than me, so it's like she's a kid too. And so yeah, I just kind of hid that for a long time until I told a therapist, and then that was kind of what started my mental health journey. I didn't stick with her though, honestly, because I was like, I don't trust this bitch, like she just blew up my life. But now I am glad because I think a lot of my anxiety stemmed from going through that. And so yeah, my biggest thing is with therapy is keep looking until you find a therapist that you feel like actually helps. Because I probably went through maybe 4 or 5 therapists until I found, and like it could be like the little things. Like now I've been diagnosed with OCD, but my first therapist, it was like her room was so fucking cluttered and I like couldn't even concentrate. And then my second therapist was like my mom's therapist, and he was like this old white guy. He was nice, but like I don't really at 16 want to be talking to this dude about, sexual abuse when I was younger, and all that. And so I think as I've learned through my journey, it's just really important to find a therapist that you click with and you feel comfortable with. So my first therapist that I eventually found, her name's Brandy. And I went to her for I want to say 3 or 4 years. But another thing about therapy is if you feel like you're not necessarily getting anything out of it anymore, then that kind of means it's time to look for another therapist. And so I probably stayed with her maybe a little bit too long.
Mm.
But then at that point, I was like, okay, I think I need to step out of my comfort zone and I think I need to find a male therapist. And because I have a weird relationship with men in general, I don't always really feel safe around them and stuff, especially in like a vulnerable situation. So it was really uncomfortable at first, but he was actually the first person to teach me about somatic healing and like somatic
Mm.
therapy. And up until this point, all of my therapy was like the top down approach. So, like, what's going on in your mind, and then, you know, figuring everything else out. Where when I started going to him, I would tell him what was going on, and he was always like, okay, well, like, where do you feel that in your body? A lot of the times I feel it either in my throat, like my throat feels like there's a lump in it, or I maybe have like a heavy chest. Um, Again, always with the stomach ache. So he was kind of the first person that helped me learn what it's like to drop into my body and see what I'm feeling. And I realized in these, I think I've been going to him for like 2 years now. So in the past 26 years, I didn't really understand like how dysregulated my nervous system was and stuff like that, and how that really did impact me. So that was another really helpful thing of learning. His was more the bottom up approach, because it's like I can think about shit all day, like I'm a spiral thinker, I can
Mm.
go on and on and on, you know. And so I think talking for me about my therapy, or about what's going on, wasn't really necessarily helping, because I could contextually understand it, but I couldn't understand why my body was still feeling that like fight or flight, and like just so anxious. And then fast forward, now I see a OCD therapist. They're awesome. And yeah, I got diagnosed with OCD I think last year, and that was very confirming for me. And they also specialize in being neurodivergent and stuff like that. And now OCD is considered a neurodivergency. But I originally sought out this therapist because I learned about autism and what that looks like for women, and how a lot of women now are being like later diagnosed, because all the data was really just tested on white boys. And when you look at that, they, because of how boys are raised in a patriarchal society, especially white boys, the data is only showing one, you know, version of that. Where if you take into gender, women and men are, you know, raised differently in the patriarchal society, and that skews the data. And then you also have to look at religion, cultural values. I know that Black women are like the least diagnosed with being autistic, but obviously women are autistic. And so, yeah, when you only test on a certain group of people, you only get one data point. And so they're now starting to realize with autism how many women are actually autistic. So I haven't been officially diagnosed. I was starting the process to get diagnosed, and kind of learning about that. But now with all the recent shit with RFK and all that, I just am like, I don't necessarily want that on my medical chart, just in case. And I know I'm like going to worst case scenario, but just in case I would ever have to like leave the country because of how it's going. Because for me, I've never wanted to have children. And if it gets to a point where like our government would kind of force that on us, like I would be dipping out, because that's not for me. And I know in a lot of countries, if you have that diagnosis, you wouldn't be allowed to get a visa. And it's obviously still very discriminated against, because people don't really know about it. But yeah, so I think learning about all that with myself, and again, therapy is my biggest thing. I tell everyone all the time, go to therapy. It's like, you know, you can have you could be a really shitty best friend. Like you can talk about all your shit, and for once you don't have to listen to other people's shit. And you know, so it's kind of nice. I don't know why more people don't do therapy, but yeah, I think for me that journey was really what's helped me get to where I am. But how about you? What are you? What are you feeling?
Um, I have been to therapy. I'm not currently in therapy, but I am thinking about resuming it just because, like you said, it's nice to be able to, um, just express what you have going on and have somebody there who is, licensed and, you know, ready to, help you with what you've got going on. Um, and I only ever had one therapist and I liked her. She was cool. Her name was Kristen. And she was there for or I visited her through the university's like system or whatever. So, and I started going to her because in was it my freshman year? No, my sophomore year, I had realized that it was a traumatic event. And so I needed help with that because it had really fucked me up. Just, yeah, I was just very, to class and to work. And, that's pretty much it. But just kind of like, coasting through, like not really.
Like enjoying life and
Yeah.
like experiencing it.
Yeah. And I was having panic attacks and it was just a lot going on. But yeah, I was able to, with her help and just like, kind of not conceptualizing, but I guess processing the event and just, what happened and how to move forward was very helpful. And yeah, I think it would be very beneficial for me to get back into therapy because there's not necessarily anything going on that I'm like, ooh, like I need to go see somebody. But I think I'm just I don't know. Part of mental health is, like how you talk to yourself and like how you perceive yourself, right? And so I used to have a very um, negative self talk, which I have changed, which is good.
Yay.
But yeah, that was one thing that I had to do just to kind of better my own mental health because, your voice is the voice that you hear the most. So, you want to make sure it's, you know, saying good things to you and not what's the word?
Like
Disparaging you or like, putting you down. So that was something that that has really improved my mental health and I'm really glad that I still have work to do, but that was probably one of the best things that I could have done for myself. As well as I really would love to get a therapist that I can relate to a little bit more. So I'll need to look into that because my job has an EAP program, employee assistance program. I don't know. Couldn't tell you what EAP stands for, but they have that. And I think it's like maybe 6 free sessions a year or something like that. So it's, it's something, it's a good place to start. So I am thinking about like taking up a hobby, like maybe like another hobby, like that I go to the gym and stuff like that. And that's another way for me to, like, that's another thing that boosts my mental health because, every time I go to the gym, even if, whether it's a day that I'm, going really hard or maybe I'm, kind of half-assing it, like just going to the gym makes me feel like, wow, I did something. Like, I got up, I, did what I needed to do. And especially, when you see results and stuff, like, it's really affirming and stuff like that. And so I've been a little bit lazy this week. So
That's
even
fair.
that, it's just kind of like, ugh, you kind of beat yourself up about it. But oh, that's another thing that I really had to overcome is like just like demonizing rest. Just because like the way that I grew up, like um I don't know, it was just kind of like, why are you like, my dad would always be very much like, you need to, on the weekends, like, there's no sleeping in. Like, sleeping in is, if you're not up by like 9, like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
there's something that you need to be doing, which, like, that in and of itself isn't, you know, sometimes you have to wake up early, but it's not the worst to,
Mm-hmm.
sleep in sometimes. And just, you know, it's been a lot for me to, because I feel like I'm just somebody who's very go, go, go. Um, but it's been a lot for me to just kind of be like, hey, everybody needs to rest. Um, Sometimes you just don't want to do stuff, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You can take time to rest, but next day get up and do it.
Yeah.
Or, at least do something. Like, sometimes I don't feel like going to the gym, so I can always, do an at-home workout or something like that. And I still did something, and I don't have to beat myself up about it,
Yeah.
because I think I'm just somebody who also is very um like perfectionist in some ways. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have really um I guess rigid standards for myself, so I have to give myself grace sometimes, and
Yeah.
things like that. So I think I've never been officially diagnosed with anything, so I can't really say like, oh, I have this or I have that, but
And like
I
we're very similar in a lot of ways, so I'll say that.
yeah, so I'm very I don't know. And I just think that also another, like, your mom was very, when you were young, your mom was like, "Oh, go to therapy." But my mom, like, I don't know. I think a lot of Black people in general would say, like, therapy is not necessarily something that is that a lot of people in the community do. I think now that is, you know, slowly shifting, but especially within African communities, just like, what do you need? Like, therapy, like, therapy for what? Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Mental health for what? Like, especially with my parents' generation, especially like my dad's, because my mom is elder gen. Well, they're both like the older side of Gen X.
Okay.
So it's just, I feel like, especially my dad, like, they didn't really have time to sit there and think about their feelings, and, like, how
Right.
how they were raised, and how that,
Affected
shaped them,
them.
and, whatever the case may be. So it's like, when you come to them and you're like, oh, I think I'm depressed, it's like, girl, what do you mean you're depressed? Like, you know you live nice, you go to school, you eat good. Like, what are you don't have to worry about anything. Like, what are you talking about? You're depressed. So um yeah, that was never something that was like encouraged or even really talked about. I didn't really, like, of course I knew therapy was like a thing, but it was, I think, and I feel like back, when we were growing up, like, therapy was like, oh my gosh, she goes to therapy. Like,
Yeah.
why is she going to therapy? Like, she's weird. Why is she going to
Yeah.
therapy? And it's just
Yeah.
like, now it's a lot more normalized, but
Mm-hmm.
I think for some people, especially
Yeah.
in different communities, there's still that stigma of, I'm not gonna go. I can handle my own problems. Like, I'm not gonna go pay a shrink to, tell
Right.
me, what I need to do to better my life. But, like you said, there's somatic therapy. There's so many different types of therapy. If one is not the type to sit and, let
Mm-hmm.
everything all hang out verbally. Um, but yeah, for me, it's the mind. You got to make sure your mind is right, because if it's not, there's a lot of things that can go awry.
Yeah.
And
Like you have to
so,
live with yourself every day, so you better make it good.
yeah. And so, different things go on in life. And, sometimes you feel like you might need to go talk to somebody or go do something. And sometimes you don't. But it's good I think people should be open to, different types of help. But yeah, I really want to get back into, I think something that would be beneficial for me, just specifically to my mental health, but just overall. I really want to like look for, I don't know if you guys remember getting like those brochures like in the summer that had like all the like art classes and like the summer camps and like stuff like
Oh, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if they still send those to the houses, but I really want to find like maybe like an art class at like one of the close by like
Yeah.
recreation centers, or like, do something like that, because I'm such a homebody and I already work from home. So it's like, I can, if my fridge is stocked and I have and I have some weed and I have, what I could be in the house for a good, 3 days before I have to leave. And it's just like, I have to, I have to get out, because it's honestly kind of driving me crazy that I am like not really, like I go to work, I go to the gym sometimes, I go see my friends, but I feel like just having a creative outlet would be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as a kid, like I used to love to draw. I used to love to like make my own stories. Like I would write my own songs and I'd like sing
Aw.
them. I really wanted to be like a fashion designer when I was a kid. Like
Dude, stop. No way. I wanted to be a fashion designer too. Like that was like my dream.
yeah, like I
Like
really,
twins.
yeah, like I had so many, like I was always drawing like these different outfits and stuff. And yeah, so I want to find something that I could do regularly that, allows me to show my creative side. So I'll have to look and see what specifically that is. But yeah, that's what I'm doing to kind of make my reality look the way I want it to.
See, I love that you said art because honestly, I don't think people realize how art can actually be kind of like therapy. Like you can work through stuff and yeah, like Kylie said, like there's so many different forms of therapy. Like there's music therapy, there's EMDR, which is like trying to like connect both of your sides of your brain. So like some people do one where they wear headphones and one side will beep, the other side will beep, and it's trying to create like a kind of a neural pathway. You could also do it with tapping. Like you can do, this is what I do when I'm like really stressed about something, I'm really dysregulated. Like I'll just like, whatever I'm thinking about, I just kind of, okay, where am I feeling it in my body? And I just literally like tap my arms like this. And it doesn't feel like you're really doing anything, but like it does. There's science that shows like it does help kind of reform some of those pathways and stuff. So there's that. There's like I said, somatic therapy, talk therapy. There's so many types. So it's like go out, find what like works best for you, because like what works for me might not work for Kylie, might not work for Sam. Everyone has different needs, but yeah, I think that's important. And also, I will say, just learning and talking to my friends about stuff. It is also very important if you are a person of color or from a different religion or, part of the world. It's very important to find a therapist that understands nuances and like takes into your culture. Because if one of my friends, she had this white lady and she's Asian. And so this white lady's like, yeah, well, let's talk about boundaries with your parents. And she's like, okay, yeah, no, you don't understand all these cultural nuances behind it. And I can't just do that like, I would with my mom. And even, for instance, my bestie, like how she is with her mom, like she can't do certain things because, again, that cultural aspect. So it is also very important to find a therapist that understands that and not someone that's going to force you into situations without understanding that data point, because that really won't help you at all.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely important to, yeah, because I've heard some crazy stories about like people's therapists doing very unethical things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely, um, make sure that you are, if you know, if you go to a counselor or therapist and you feel like they, don't resonate with you, or, they just rub you the wrong way, then, you don't have to, keep seeing them.
Yeah.
It's best that you don't. So,
Yeah.
there's so many therapists out there that deal with so many different things. So, you know, you just got to do your research and you'll find them. But I do recognize that, depending on where people are located and depending on what types of needs they have, um, that's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with that being said, that makes it even more important to do the research and just make sure that whoever it is that you're seeing is um somebody that can actually help you and instead of hurt you. Because yeah, some people have, some people have some stuff going on, and there's no reason to add on to that when you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be somebody who's there to help.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, as I've gotten older, I've the good thing about social media is, now we can kind of see like all the different types of therapy and all the different I guess signs of different things. Um but again, it's always good to consult a professional if you have questions
Mm-hmm.
about things, because you can self-diagnose all you want, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason why people have take the time and use their resources to get diagnosed. Is because anybody can say anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, but with I'm glad that now more people are like open to actually exploring their mental health and being um open with what they've got going on. And it's good that workplaces are implementing different mental health things. And when I was in the school system a few years ago, the kids were learning social and emotional um well-being and stuff like that. And even I went to go see my nieces earlier this month, and they one of them is about to go into kindergarten, the other one is in second grade.
Okay.
And so the younger one had a little like workbook that like, oh, I'm sad, I'm this, I'm
Mm.
that, and like talking about like just showing them like, oh, these are, the different feelings. And then they had little like blank spaces for them to, kind of write in other feelings.
Aw.
So yeah, I think with kids being um being exposed to that information younger, they'll
Mm-hmm.
hopefully be able to regulate their emotion, or have more tools than we did in the people
Yeah.
before us to handle their emotions, and be able to say, this hurt my feelings, instead of
Mm-hmm.
just hitting somebody or crying, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. But kids will be kids. But
Honestly, that's so true, because I feel like now learning how to regulate my nervous system at, what did I start, 26, 27, like, wow, where would I have been if I learned that as a child? And it's
yeah,
really cool to see little boys and little girls like their parents are starting to teach that emphasis on the little boys, which is very cool because it's, I don't know, we see in our society a lot of men don't know even what their emotions are, how to state that, how to feel that. I think men have a more under their layer is more anger, but I think deep down it's much more than anger, but they don't know how to feel that or don't know how to word it or say it or describe it because they weren't really taught that. So yeah, it's cool seeing a generation kind of start out a little bit more ahead.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, the patriarchy is harmful to everybody, not just women, but men as well, because yeah, men are not really allowed to display any other emotion other than anger or happiness or lust. Other than that,
Mm-hmm.
if you're sad or if you're disappointed or if you're um
Scared.
yeah, scared, just anything aside from, those first three emotions, like, people will call your manhood or your masculinity into question, and it's just like, damn, that's crazy. People can't
Mm-hmm.
even, express their emotions. And yeah, like you said, they, were never really given the tools to do so. So, you know, it,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely, we just got to keep it going,
Mm-hmm.
There's always more to learn. And as we learn more, we can continue to teach more. And it is really nice to see people, um, uh, it's really cool to be able to see people's like kids tell them like, oh, like small children tell them like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is how I'm feeling, like this is what happened and this is how I'm feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can tell that like their parent or whoever they're around is really instilling in them to, talk their feelings out, whatever it is. So it's really cool to yeah, to see the children um growing and being taught healthy mannerisms.
Yeah. And I think that just goes into account of like going back to how we talked about like our generation of parents really didn't have the time to sit down and like, how did this affect me? And, was this negative or positive, my childhood? And so I think our generation put in has been for me or what I've seen, putting in more effort for learning about themselves, figuring out their own traumas before they have kids. So then they're able to, regulate their nervous system. So if their kid's crying for 3 hours, they're not like my dad would have snapped and freaking he's thrown shit at us and like he spanked us for dumbass shit and like he screamed at us a lot. And it was just like, now as an adult, I can look at that and say, he doesn't know how to regulate his nervous system. I still don't think he knows how to regulate his nervous system. He's someone that anger lives right below the surface for him, and the smallest thing it comes out. And I think it's just years of shoving shit down and not really learning about himself, taking the time to figure out why he is the way he is, and kind of dissecting the ego. And yeah, so I'm happy to say, like, yeah, it took me 28 years to learn and obviously still learning. I'm not perfect at it by any means. But just knowing that, okay, yeah, I can regulate my nervous system. And yeah, when I'm around, children now and stuff, it's like they could be super fucking annoying, but it's like, okay, I'm an adult. I can regulate my nervous system. I'm not going to snap on this child because it's like, I don't understand how people, almost hold children to a higher regard than adults as far as
Yeah.
they just got here. They don't know how to regulate their nervous system. They don't know what's going on. They need some help and guidance. And people expect children to get over things really quickly or not cry or not have tantrums or whatever. And it's just like, I think that's part of the human experience. But it's like, okay, you're gonna, maybe hit your kid for crying, but is anyone hitting you for being like literally the biggest asshole? No. So yeah, yeah, that part I'm glad I at least at this age have figured out what that means for me. Um, but yeah, just going back to like finding the right therapist. Like me and my he's now my ex-partner. That's kind of new, but we did couples therapy, and it could be simple things of them saying certain things. Like I tried to tell the therapist, because again, we know uh what's the word matters, like
Intent versus impact.
not that, but like, you know how Kamala said, what do you think, you just fell out of a coconut tree? How it's like everything before you basically impacts how you are now, type of thing. So obviously, like, I was trying to explain to this therapist, and again, an old white therapist, about like my OCD, and I was kind of telling him about my like trials and tribulations and learning about autism, and like trying to get a diagnosis and doing all that stuff. And he instantly was like, well, you're not autistic. You're giving me like eye contact. And like, I was just like, okay. So that pissed me off, because again, as we know, women learn how to mask. They're raised differently. That's why most women don't get diagnosed till they're an adult, till they can advocate for themselves and understand what's going on. So that's a huge misconception. And then he also brought up, Asperger's, which is, I think that's been out of the DSM 5 since like 2013, because the background of that is a Nazi doctor, Hans Asperger's, because autism wasn't discovered technically until like 1933. And obviously, like around that time, we know all the shit popping off with Nazi Germany. And so people used to describe autism as high functioning or low functioning, which for people that don't know, those terms are out because it brings like a negative connotation. So now people say low support needs or high support needs. And so I would fall into the category of low support needs. So I just accommodate myself. Like if I'm, feeling like I can't get everything done and struggling with like personal care, I will just hire someone to help me. Like I'm at that point in my life where I can do that. But yeah, just it's very important to, like Kylie said, if you have one of those things that, or you're like, ooh, that was a little weird, I feel uncomfortable, just listen to that, because I ended up going to we did 3 sessions altogether before we canceled everything. But yeah, it just those things that make you uncomfortable. And it's like even a therapist that has gone to school, it's like because I have been learning about autism for probably 4, almost 5 years now. I've taken countless tests. I've done so much research. I've obviously talked to my therapist about it, and they help me a lot learning about stuff. But yeah, 2 times in my life, I've been like, oh, you're not autistic because you can hold eye contact and stuff like that. I also had another doctor say that when I tried to go to him to get a consult, and he didn't write me a consult because he was like, you're not autistic. And I was like, okay, yeah, you picked up about that in 5 minutes, but sure. So, yeah, don't let like people invalidate you. Like if you know yourself the best, you live with yourself every single day. My entire life, I felt like something was wrong with me. And so now learning about that, I finally feel like not alone. I found a community that understands me. And yeah, I can accommodate myself now, but yeah, it's just about, doing what works for you. And again, you know yourself the best out of anyone. So if it's going to help you, do it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you don't advocate for yourself, nobody will. So, it's important to seek the care that you feel that you need and or deserve, and you'll come across it. So yes, on that note, we are going to pass it over to Sam so he can share his fun fact for the week.
Thank you, Kylie, for passing it over. Yeah, this is Sam Fun Facts. So a little bit on my backstory for why I'm bringing this up in particular. When my mental health journey started, was when I actually started messing around with psychedelics in my youth. They changed my perspective on a lot of things because of the nature and how they work, which I do not fully understand just yet compared to some of the clinical studies being conducted today. However, there is, and very near and dear to our hearts, a university that is conducting research on psychedelics. Give me 1 second to bring it up. This is from CU Boulder.
Of course.
University of Colorado, Denver. CU. Okay, so actually CU Denver, my bad.
Okay.
CU Denver Center for Psychedelic Research. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce all those crazy words, but we're going to skip down a little bit. This is on their official website. The CU Denver Center for Psychedelic Research is dedicated to improving quality of life through research and education about the effects and therapeutic mechanisms of psychedelic drugs to help treat emotional, behavioral, psychiatric, and neurologic conditions, as well as use in palliative care, which means for those of you that don't know, it means to mask the symptoms without treating the actual cause of the infection. And on that, in use of palliative care for late-stage cancer and chronic debilitating diseases. Launched in June 2024, the work conducted here is also shared with the community to inform public policymakers about the evolving science and potential applications for use among patients facing an array of psychological and medicinal conditions. It helped me a lot. And because we are in the great state of Colorado, I can say that I still sometimes microdose. I have not needed to go back to consuming more regularly. This is like once a year, maybe at this point. But I've taken those lessons that I've learned and tried to integrate them more into my day-to-day life. And those lessons are still coming back up as little reminders here and there. So I'm very grateful. And that has been Sam's Fun Facts.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, actually, that it's a really cool kind of new thing, I guess, in medicine. But for people that like documentaries and kind of learning more about that, Netflix has a couple. And the one I watched was The Mind Explained, and they have 2 seasons right now. And it is in season 1, and it's on psychedelics. So it just kind of talks about how there's this like scale, quote unquote, of happiness, and like antidepressants will bump you up a couple points on the scale. But they've noticed that psychedelics do something to the brain that bumps you up. Don't quote me on it. Watch the documentary, but I think like 15 points or something like that. So a vast difference, which is really cool. And honestly, I think this has been around since the 60s, 70s. They've been kind of working with this. So yeah, it's just really cool. And it's just another way, again, to connect those neural pathways. And yeah, you do kind of understand yourself more. I've tried some shrooms, and I've probably only microdosed as well. I'm kind of scared to try to trip and see shit. I don't think that's for me as far as my mental health is concerned. But yeah, it was kind of crazy. I was normally, when I go out, I have a lot of social anxiety and being around new people and in being in crowds. I still like to go out, but it's something that it's, always in the back of my mind. And when I tried shrooms and went out for the first time, it was actually really fun. I didn't have the physical sensations of social anxiety, which usually that's, again, like chest hurting, lump in my throat, stomach ache, all those vibes. But yeah, it was kind of nice to not feel that. I was like, wow, is this what people feel that don't have social anxiety when they go? That's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's something cool. But yeah, that's probably where I draw the line. Like, I don't think I need to do acid or anything like that. I think that would push me over the edge mental health wise. So
yes, I've definitely dabbled with psychedelics myself, and I do agree with Sam. They have definitely opened my perspective and just helped me to look at things in a different way that I didn't necessarily see before I tried it. but it is definitely, you have to make sure that when you are on these substances that you are in, a good mind space to do so. Because if not, it can be interesting. So you have to be in a good headspace, and then you have to be, from what I know, like if you're, obviously you have to be the people that you trust and that because for me personally, like being in that state of mind and like going out into like a whole space of people that I don't know, like it's very nerve-wracking for me, so I could not do that. It's good to have somebody that probably is familiar with it, so that they can help you out, and if you need to go somewhere, they can drive you or whatever the case may be. If you can do it somewhere like in nature where there's not like a whole bunch of people around you, maybe if you're well, I'm sure to somebody doing it while they're camping sounds nice, but to me that sounds really scary. I would be scared as fuck about all of the like different sounds and noises, and then what if I saw something like, okay, maybe not, maybe like maybe a cabin. Yes. One time,
definitely not your setting.
No. One time we went on it, a couple of my girlfriends and I went, like, rented a cabin in the mountains, and we did some shrooms, and that was cool.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Or like maybe if you're on the beach or something. Whatever your preferred.
Yeah. Actually, I want to co-sign that, because I actually did shrooms in Vegas for New Year's. Again, it was a microdose, but I don't think I would do that again, just because I feel like when I'm on shrooms personally, I already feel like I have boundary problems with my energy already. So that kind of, for me, blew it out of the water, and I was picking up on everyone's energy around me, and I was very stressed. I got paranoid. There was this guy kind of following us at the club and being kind of weird. So yeah, don't do it in a group of people. Again, and it was Vegas for New Year's, so you walk out of your hotel and it's like shoulder to shoulder people out. It was very... I'm glad I just microdosed, because I think that would have threw me over the edge, but... Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, a nice controlled environment.
Yeah.
Where you have music that you like, and fun activities like maybe coloring, or doing a puzzle, or maybe watching a certain movie or show or something. I don't know. Yeah, just make sure, if you are going to try it out, just make sure you're being smart about it. Make sure you have enough time. I would not recommend doing it before a big event, or before you have like work. Like if you have a good 2 or 3 days off, cool.
Yeah. Because I will say the next day, like, it's not like it's not like with alcohol where you feel hungover, but it's like you still sort of feel some of the effects, I would say.
Yeah, you feel down. I don't know how else to explain it than that. So yeah, just make sure that you have, because depending on what you're doing, sometimes trips can be maybe 4 to 5 hours. Sometimes they can be 8 to 12 hours. So, you have to take into account the trip itself, and then allow yourself time to get it out of your system. And then,
like definitely don't do it the night before you have to like work in the morning. Like probably not a good idea.
Not
anything like that. Bad.
not
Thumbs
down. Definitely be careful. Definitely do your research. But if it
trusted
calls
source
to you,
getting it as well.
Yes, exactly. Don't get it from just any Joe Schmo on the street.
Yeah. Now they make like gummy shrooms, chocolate shrooms, and there are some websites that sell it. And because Colorado decriminalized it, I believe we're allowed to get it like shipped to our house. Like a lot of my friends have done it. Usually that's how I get my stuff, is from my trusted friends. But Yeah, I also don't do it that often. I think I've done it like 3 or 4 times in the course of like a couple years.
Yeah. Also, it's not something to do every weekend. It's something to
No.
do like very seldom.
Yeah. And same with like personally I don't partake in like Molly or anything like that, but that's one thing that that can cause holes in your brains. Acid, I guess, can get trapped in your spinal cord. And like you could have lasting effects with that. So, yeah, moderation is key when you're doing this type of stuff. Like Kylie said, do your research, just be safe. Again, if you do have mental health stuff, think about that as well. Like right now with my state of my mental health, I will not be doing shrooms for a bit. I think I'm good on that. But yeah, like you don't want to be sad and then be like, oh, I'm gonna do shrooms, it's gonna be fun. No, you're gonna get more sad. You're gonna get more introspective about whatever you're going through. So it really does kind of like it's like almost like an ego death, you know? You do see shit differently after. So whether you want to open that can of worms or not, just yeah, that's some of the backstory of it.
Yeah. Be aware. Don't say
Yeah.
we didn't tell you.
Yeah.
And keep it cute.
Keep it cute. Keep it fun.
Yeah.
Keep it safe.
Yes, emphasis on keep it safe. But on that note, I'm Kylie.
I'm Peyton. And this has been Fires of Change. This episode was sponsored by Peyton Beauties. If you ever need hair care needs, jump over to my Instagram, Peyton Beauties. And I'd love to help you out.